All right. So before we move on to the multiple sequence alignment, I wanted to highlight the correction in the previous class. So in the PAM normalization, I mentioned that we can take log2 ratio and this will represent observed by expected. This is incorrect because these are the count. FAB is the count of mutations from A to B and FA is the count of total number of mutations involving A. So now we know that whole of this would be less than 1. So log 2 will always be negative. So this is incorrect. I got confused by this denominator over here. So I'm making this correction. So until here, everything is correct, right? And rest of the slides are also correct. So I need to correct this part, right? All right. So the correct form is the following. So we have this uh, matrix element MAB, or the probability of mutation from A to B, which is the normalized version, normalized by the mutability. Now this is the observed probability that A will be converted to B, right? Or uh, probability that we observe B, which is uh, resulting from mutation of A, right? So this is the observed number of B's resulting from A, right? So what will be the expected number? The expected number will be the random probability that we see B is the probability of observing B. How many B's were there in the whole alignment, right? So, so this is the B which is coming from A, and this is the B overall, right? That's the probability of observing B in the whole alignment. So now some of you might say that, well, the correct form should be, so there will be some literature which get the derivation in a different way. So don't get confused. All of the conclusions are leading to converging to the same thing, where you would say that it should actually be PA dot PB, which will be the joint probability of observing A and B. Well, PA, we have already normalized by PA in mutability. We don't want this double normalization. So there will be some literature where you will find that they have some form of MAB which is not having PA, and then they normalize like that. Okay, so let's not get into that. So this is the log ratio, final log 2 ratio uh, for PAM matrix, log odd ratio. This is the log odd ratio. Right. So this was the correction that I wanted to highlight, and I have posted this in the Google Classes as well as in YouTube. Right. And I will also upload one document, one brief PDF document, which will help you uh, to uh, to understand this better. Okay, so let's move on. And today I'm going to talk about multiple sequence alignment. Multiple sequence alignments. As the name suggests, we are going to align multiple sequences now. So it's a great tool in biology, because now you can get the tree of life without even looking into the traits of organism, without going into fossil record. If you just have DNA and the protein sequences, you can make the tree of life. Okay. All right. So phylogenetic tree that Darwin envisioned in his Origin of Life. That's what the tree of life is. So now multiple sequence alignment can be done in 3 ways. One is multi-dimensional dynamic programming. So you remember the Needleman-Wunsch and Smith-Waterman algorithm. Those are dynamic programming. Okay, those are example of algorithms which are included within the broader framework of dynamic programming. So if we run the Needleman-Wunsch in multiple dimension, not only in 2 dimension, then we can actually lead to multiple precise solution to multiple sequence alignment. Right. So the second approach, it seems this is going to be NP hard if you increase, or may actually go to NP complete if you increase the number of sequences in your multiple sequence alignment. The most popular one is the progressive multiple sequence alignment, so which actually is doing pairwise alignment in a progressive manner. The third one is the heuristic one, which is not very popular. You can actually use, let's say, genetic algorithm for multiple sequence alignment, heuristic approach. So among these, this is the most popular one. The known algorithms are cluster W and T coffee is another one. Muscle. So these are some version of progressive. So I'll not talk about each of these algorithms. I'll talk about the overall approach, and these are some version of uh, these progressive multiple sequence alignment. So we'll start with the multidimensional DP. So as the name suggests, we need to run, let's say, Needleman-Wunsch algorithm in multiple dimension. Now, you remember we were actually working in NW, a Needleman-Wunsch algorithm. We were working in 2 dimension. We were having 2 sequences, and then we were having a matrix, and then we were, back tracing this matrix, right? So we had sequence 1 and sequence 2. And we had certain values in each of these cells, right? Which we call as Mij, right? Which was derived from substitution, scores, plus gap penalties and all that. Now, sorry. What we can do is we can run the same algorithm in multiple dimensions. And let us say I have 3 sequences, then I can have a following form. So I have one sequence on this direction, one sequence in this direction, right? And then I can have a z direction, and I'll get a cube, a grid, right? So I have S1 on this direction, S2 on this direction, and S3 in this direction, right? So now instead of each of this cube over here, let us say some cube which will be one cell equal to one cell over here. This is going to be M, I, J and K now, right? That's what so we are going to run the same thing what we did here, but now we have additional dimensions. So Mij here would be, in fact, could be a max of, so let us say the previous value in the previous cell, in the diagonal one will be Mi1 minus 1, J minus 1, K minus 1, plus Sijk, some substitution penalty, and likewise we'll have multiple different possibilities where we are coming from one direction and so on, right? And then we will have 9 different possibilities with the gap penalties, right? As you increase the number of sequences, these calculations will be enormous, right? So this is your multi-dimensional dynamic programming for multiple sequence alignment. It turns out that it can give you can work it out for 3 sequences, but as you increase the number of sequences, more often the number of sequences could go to 20, 30, 50 to 200, right? So there could be huge number of sequences. This becomes very impractical and NP hard problem. Right? So we So, which is why we work on the progressive approach. Now, I'll talk about the basic idea of progressive alignment. I'll not talk about a particular version of progressive alignment. For example, um, let us say that I have 3 sequences or multiple sequences. Let's work out. Let's draw multiple sequences. Okay, so we have progressive multiple sequence alignment, right? Assume that we have number of sequences, right? I have collection of sequences over here, and these are unaligned one. Okay, these are, I'm not aligning them. These are some sequences that I have. Let us say A, B, C, D, and likewise, right? I have multiple sequences which are unaligned right now. What I'm going to do is, the first thing is I'm going to do pairwise alignment, right? So I'm going to make all possible pairs. For example, A to B, and then B to C over here, C to D, A to C, A to B, and so on, right? I can make pairwise alignments over here, right? I can take 2 of them at a time and start making these pairwise alignment. And you can do it with your NWA. So basically, I performed pairwise Needleman-Wunsch algorithm. The next thing is you make a distance matrix. Now, for each one of them, you can get a score, right? And from that score, you can either calculate distance, which will be inverse of the score. Well, let's not get into that, whether we plot distance or score. It's the same thing, it's just that if the score is high, distance is less between the 2 sequences. You can actually calculate something called Hamming distance by looking at how many similarities are there, identities and substitutions and so on. You can look into the, it's not very difficult to calculate Hamming distance. You can look in the literature if you are interested. So you have your A, B, C, D, E, F sequences, A, B, C, E, F, right? So you will have, what was the score? What was the score between, let's say, A and B, A and C, and so on? Now the diagonal would be meaningless, right? In this case, you have scores. Now, so this was easy, right? So now we have to actually make a tree, a distance tree from this matrix. And the way we make it, the tree is not very difficult. So what we do is the following. We first make, let me change the color. What we do is, we first look at what are the maximal pairwise scores over here and club them together. Let us assume that I have A and C, which were having very high score, not A and B. And then I learned B and D are having very high score. So I club them together in one cluster. So I make edges between them, right? So basically what I'm doing, A to C and B to D, right? So, and then I have to see, let us say, and then E to F, and E to F were similar. So these were the highest scores in my matrices, pairwise scores that I could get. So I club them together. So pairwise is done here, right? So now the thing is, you might say that, what about A to B? Where is that represented here? Well, A to B was less than A to C. So B is clubbed with D. So this is the, at very basic level, these are my three clusters, which each one of each cluster is having two sequences, right? So now you have to cluster these clusters, right? And I got to know that AC cluster is actually close to BD cluster, right? And then I learned that ACBD cluster, which is the whole of this, is now one cluster over here, which converges over here, is actually connected to EF. Okay, there could be in alternate scenario, this cluster might be connected to this one, and then they will be connected. So I'm doing it progressively. I am clustering them together on a tree, on a dendrogram. Now you might say this is fine, that this is important. Now you might say that it's all fine that when I cluster these two, right? This is coming from the NWA, and I got score, and I know that. How do I cluster two clusters now? That's what I did over here, right? I cluster them together in one bigger cluster like this, right? So how do I cluster two clusters? So that should also be done in some method, right? By some method. So the way we do it, so I know the scores of each one of them, all pairwise scores I know. A to C I know, and that's what I got it from over here, right? So A to C. Now I also know A to B. I know A to B here. So that's important thing. I know A to B score, right? And I also know A to D score. So I know A to D score over here, right? Likewise, I also know C to B. C to B would be here. And I also know C to D. So C over here and D. So apart from the scores that I had pairwise in the initial clusters, which is A to C and B to D, B to D, these. So blue one are the first clusters, which are pairwise one, and the other one across cluster. The red one are across cluster. So red one is representing across cluster, these scores, right? These four scores. So I make use of these scores to actually find out whether AC cluster is close to BD or EF. Okay, and the way I do is following. What I do is I calculate average or mean of let's say A to B score, right? Cross cluster A to B score, comma A to C score, A to sorry yeah B to C score and A to D score. Just give me a minute. Yeah, so Yeah. So A to B, B to C. What are the other combination? A to D and C to D. So I take these scores and find out whether this is bigger or another one, because I need to check with the other cluster which is EF. So I look at cluster 1 which is AC cluster, A to E and A to F, C to E and C to F. So I'm trying to find out whether my AC cluster should be clubbed together with BD or EF, right? So I checked these two and then I find out which one is maximum. Okay, so I club them. If in this case I found that this was maximum, right? This was maximum. So I clustered AB to, sorry, AC to BD cluster. So that's how I clustered it over here, right? So that's how you keep on building this. So once you get this tree, this is a guide tree now. This is your basically guide tree. This will guide you which one, uh, how should you start the multiple sequence alignment now. So you follow this tree and align them. Okay. So let us go to the next slide. So I have this tree. A to C and B to D and E to F. Now comes the progressive alignment. Now A to C alignment you already had, right? So over here we already know these alignments, right? These alignments we already know because we started with the pairwise alignment, so we know these. Now we have to align, this is important now. So let us say this was the alignment over here. Roughly speaking, this was your pairwise alignment, right? This is another pairwise alignment. This is another pairwise alignment. Now the thing is that we have to align the alignments now, right? So you first thing that you have to align is AC to BD cluster. Why? Because they are closer. AC cluster is more closer to BD than EF. So I need to align this cluster, which is AC cluster to BD cluster. Okay. So I need to align the alignments now. Now, how do we do this? This is called profile alignment. When you align the alignments, this can be done with the notion of profile to profile alignment. Okay, how do we do this? The first thing is, it's really not very difficult. So what we do is, we for each alignment. Now this alignment, for example, if you go further, this alignment would be like this. So this is going to be, once you align them, you will have another alignment, which would look like, after doing this, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4 aligned together, right? So you'll get a one small MSA and then you have to align another alignment to this one. So no matter how big the alignment is, the minimal size of the element will be 2 sequences and maximum there is no limit. What we do is the following. We calculate profile of first alignment Now you might wonder what is profile. Profile is nothing but, so this is, let us say, profile of AC alignment. And then you have profile of BD alignment. What is profile now? Profile is nothing but your position specific scoring matrix that you learn in motif analysis, right? So you will have, let us say in this case, these are DNA sequences. For the time being, assume that these are DNA sequences because I can't draw a bigger matrix here. So the size of the matrix will be, the number of rows will be 4 only, ATGC, and likewise ATGC over here, right? And the length, the number of columns would be equal to the uh, size of the alignment, right? Let's say N. And approximately sizes will be same, or let us say this is having a different length called M. Can have slightly different lengths also. Now, so this is PSSM, okay? So this is a very big PSSM. If it is a protein sequence, then this is going to be, number of rows will be 20. And now we have a, this is my Needleman-Wunsch matrix that I'm drawing, okay? So in the ordinary Needleman-Wunsch, you have one sequence here and one sequence here, right? Now I have one profile here and one profile here. All the things are same except one thing, and that is, let us say I want to calculate certain values somewhere over here. So this is the value I need to calculate in the matrix. Now, what should be my substitution score? That's the thing, right? So you can start this alignment with the same way, 0, -2, -3, and so on. That's fine. So you can get the first value, but you can always get your uh, you can always get your uh, mi -1 and mij -1, right? But then you have to apply. So, we don't write it in this way. Sorry, this is. So j -1. This is fine. You can initialize it from initial values 0 and all that. You can actually get this. The problem is, what is my Sij here? Substitution score, right? So now you can think of, let us say that the position here was, the first position was, let us say it was T. This position over here, it was T, which was maximum in this profile. And likewise, it was actually A, which was maximal over here. There can be difference, right? It is A here and it is T there. Then what do you do? What should be my substitution score over there? Right? So the idea is that if these values are different, you need to find out how similar this vector is to this vector. Okay. So if it was a T value which is high, then these two vectors will be very, very similar, right? So your Sij is basically, you can think of the similarities of two vectors. So let me highlight what are the two vectors. This is one vector. This is another vector. So what you can do is you can get the similarities of two. One of the method that you can think of is the dot product, the inner product between the two vectors x and y, right? That could be one way. The other way is you can get the correlation between these two vectors, Pearson correlation between x and y vector. You can get the Euclidean distance between x and y. Sorry, these are vectors, right? So it's not really, so if they are same. If this vector and this vector is same, this is going to be 1. Right? So you can, the correlation will be very, very high and so on. And likewise, the gap penalty, you can decide about what your gap penalties are. So profile to profile alignment helps to build the alignment of alignments, and then you keep on progressively building it. For example, after this, you are going to get this is 4 and then 6. So you get the alignment of 6 sequences already, right? This is your final alignment. Now there is a final, but not really super final. Is like a pre-final, you can say pre-final, because now when you were appending alignments over alignments and like this, there is still a scope of refinement which can improve this, right? Which can be done heuristically. For example, what do I mean by heuristic one? Did, did we learn about, okay, so you learned one heuristic algorithm earlier, right? So you can think of genetic algorithm itself. For example, let us say I split this. If I have this alignment box, alignment set, all my alignments are over here. Let us say I split into 2 from here, right? So I got this part of alignment and then this part of alignment. What I do is the following. If I'm using genetic algorithm, what I can do, I can split it from somewhere to mimic the crossover in your genetic algorithm. And as a result, what I'm going to do is you will get this blue one as one alignment, right? And we joined from somewhere here, right? This will be one alignment after crossover, and then the other one is the green one. Right, so this is your crossover in your genetic algorithm. And likewise, you can introduce a mutation. For example, you can take one of the residue over here, one of the position over here, and you can shift that position this way or that way. For example, let us say there was one gap over here, and you actually, what you did was, there was G here, you put G here and gap here, and some minor tweaking you can do in mutation. And you run it multiple times. You run this genetic algorithm for number of generation, and you will get the improved results. You can think of the what is the overall score of your multiple sequence alignment. That will be your objective function. So this was multiple sequence alignment. Now there is one thing that we need to know. People have run this multiple sequence alignments, and they have come up with another approach of doing BLAST. Let us assume that you have a query over here. You have one query in BLAST. And when you search in the database, you don't get a good hit. Okay, you don't get a good hit. So what do you do? Okay, so we can actually do some iterative BLAST to actually get closer to something rather than nothing. Okay, so to address this problem, people use this profile alignment, and I'll I'll show you in a while. So this is called SciBLAST. Now Sci stands for position specific iterative BLAST. right? What we do is the following. Uh, let's say I have this query and this is my database. I do a routine blast against the database. This is your routine protein blast, let's say, blast P. Now, whatever result I get, okay, the result might be poor in the beginning. I don't get a very conclusive result. I get something which is not very informative. So what I do, let's say this was my query and I got some alignment over here, some over here, some hits I got, right? So in this result, I put a cutoff. Below these are very, very sporadic alignments, let us assume so. So I got this cutoff over here, okay, some threshold, and I take these alignments, these blocks over here. I take these alignments. This is these blocks are basically uh, and from these alignments I get the profile, okay. Whatever hits were there, you can actually perform multiple sequence alignment of that and get a profile, right? And I get a profile over here. So from blast results, you get the profile of the whatever was there above certain reasonable cutoff. Okay. Now this profile is same PSSM kind of matrix. Okay. Now you search this profile in the database again. Okay. And how exactly we do the profile search, I'll show you in the next slide. So what we do is we again search the profile. So we do profile blast or profile search in the database. And this is done using HMM. So I'll tell you how profile HMM works. And we iterate it. Okay, so this process needs to be iterated, okay, for a certain number of times. And that number you can also give in the software to how many iterations you want. In the end, you after those many iterations, you will get some result which might be meaningful, where you get a from your query to subject you have some good alignment. All right. Now, of course, this is remote one, but it will give you certain hit which is more reasonable. And I'll give you one exercise on that, a very reasonable exercise. For example, to which bacterial protein human pCNA protein will match to. Okay. So that is done using iterative, and it will match to one of the DNA polymerase subunit in E. coli, which means that there was some evolution, long-term evolution of that DNA polymerase subunit into pCNA into higher eukaryotes. Right, so you get your some result which might be meaningful. Quite often it may not be very meaningful also. So it is not very successful thing that it is going to work for every damn protein. Okay, if you're lucky, it may work. Otherwise, you may land up to a wrong result. All right, now profile HMM, what is that? So I'll tell you, in fact, people have made databases of profile HMM. Uh, so the people have made profiles of multiple sequence alignments of protein domains. Okay, so we'll see how this profile HMM works. So let us say that I have an alignment. Okay, let's say I have an alignment of ISRM. I have some text. ISRM, and then I have, this is one sequence alignment, multiple sequence alignment, IIT M, and then IIM, let's say. Right now in this, the first thing that we do to build a profile HMM. Okay, so I'm going to make a profile HMM. Okay, so what we do is the following. The first thing is you need to define, based on certain cutoff, you need to define that this part is just a insertion. In this case, this ER seems to be an insertion. So you can say that if it is present in less than 10% of the sequences, or less than 5%, less than 20%, you say that that chunk is likely to be an insertion, not really deletion, because it's not present in most of the sequences. It is likely to be an insertion. Okay, now this is, you don't include this in your HMM. You include this in very peculiar manner. So right now I only have, for my HMM, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 states. I don't include this one, right? So we will see how we incorporate this insertion thing in my HMM, but right now I have only 4 positions, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I will have 4 states over there. Okay, now I can have a, let's say I have some starting state. I am going to start from there, and I will have some end state. Now I can start with the match thing. For example, maybe I start with a match, maybe I start with a deletion, or maybe I start with insertion. So I can have 3 states now, 3 kind of states. I will have multiple states, of course, because I have 4 states over here. Each position in the alignment is 1 state. But 3 types of different states. One is the match, other is insertion, and the deletion. So when I start, I might go to the either match state or deletion state or insertion state, right? So let's say that M1 is my starting match state, right? First match state, and likewise I can have a deletion state D1, right? So it may start from a deletion also. You never know. And then I can also start with a insertion. Let's say I0 over here. And likewise, I can have M2, M3, M4, and then I have an end state. So I can end with a deletion or match or insertion. So start or end could be anything, right? Now, depending on the probability, we'll take a particular path. Okay, now from match, the next position can also be match. In this case, it indeed is. The third position can also be match. There could be one path like this, or there could be one path that which is actually deletion to deletion. Deletion is being expanded, right? There can be one path, and of course there has to be. You cannot have all deletion all across. There has to be a path between matching and deletions, right? Because it's the combination of matches, deletions, and insertions. So you may have one path from M1 to D2 and Likewise, D1 to M2. I'll tell you why are we jumping, why not D1 to M1? That's because when we delete something, for example, there is a deletion over here, we are skipping S and T and jumping to the next position, right? That's what we are doing. And likewise, I have one path here, one path here. Likewise, I will also have path between insertion states and match states. I may go to insertion state, insert, for example, here is the insertion for the first sequence, right? So I may go to that state, and likewise, deletion can also be followed by insertion or preceded by insertion. So basically, we are making all possible paths here, except that insertion is not being followed by insertion, and that's because we are taking care of insertion in a peculiar manner. All right, so now once you go to insertion state, there is a possibility that insertion is expanded, right? So you remain in insertion state. So you can have a loop over here, insertion to insertion, insertion to insertion. Now let us read through one sequence from this. If I want to read IITM, which path will I take? So let's read IITM from this particular model. Okay. First state is matching, so I'm going to take this path, right? M1, second is also there's no insertion or deletion, it's a matching thing. So I go to M2. And from M2 to M3, and since this is not part of the alignment, I simply go to 4, right? So there's a match, match, match. So that's how I end up, and I read my sequence that I read is IITM, right? Now, how will I read, let us say, IIM? First one is matching, that's fine. Second one is also matching, so I go to M2. Okay, now third, there is a deletion over there. So which means that I need to go to deletion state now. I went to D3. Now I don't read the next matching position, right? This position I'm not reading. That's why I went to D3. Now after D3, I don't come back to M3. Then it will be this position. Okay, which is why we wrote these curves, because we are jumping. After deletion, we jump to the next position. And from D3, there is a match. So I come back to M4 and I end up, right? So then we have read IIM, right? Right. So now what is left now is the ISORM, right? So how do we read ISORM? First position is matching. That's fine. I went to M1. Second position is matching. M2. Third is also matching. I went to M3. Now there is an insertion out there, right? These were all blanks over there. So there was an insertion in ISORM sequence of ER. So I go to insertion state from there. So I went to insertion state and I remained there twice, right? E to R, so 2 positions. I took a loop over there and then come back to M4 because there is a matching there. And then basically I ended up with ISER. So this is the way we read this model, right? Okay, now the thing is that what are the transition probabilities and the so we need to actually calculate the probabilities, right? If if I read through this alignment, what is the match? Okay, is IITM matching well to this profile? Is IIM matching well? How well they are matching? How well they are matching? So until we put certain probabilities, transition and emission probabilities, we will not get to know, right? So how do we get that? So let us say the transition probability. So for example, if I take M2 and try to calculate the transition probability from M2 to I2 or D3 and so on, what is the transition probability of M2, right? To let's say D3, there is a path from M2 to I2 and M2 to M3. So what are the transition probabilities? So we are going to capture this path, so this path, and this path, transition probabilities of these three paths. Now, you need to first find out how many times M2 is encountered in all these traversals that we had, the red one, green one, and blue one. So all of them have went through M2, right? So my denominator is 3. There are 3 paths going through M2, right? And how many of those 3 paths went to D3 is just 1. So this probability is going to be 1 by 3. Out I2 is none because I didn't traverse any of the green, blue, and red path didn't go through I2, so this is 0. And M2, there is 2 by 3 because there are 2 paths, red and blue one, which is going directly to M3. So this is the way we get the transition probabilities, and you can do this for all the nodes. Okay, now how do we get the emission probabilities? Emission probability. So again, you have to look at, let's say, I want to look at this position now, which is M3, this position. How often did I get S, okay, out of the 3 positions? I got S only once, right? So 1 by 3 is the transition probability of observing S at M3 position, right? And likewise, the same thing is for T is 1 by 3 and so on. So this is the way we calculate the emission probabilities, which is similar to what we did earlier. Now for each path, you can have the joint probabilities, emissions and transition probabilities. If you recall the HMM model for gene prediction, we actually multiply these probabilities to score them, right? And that score will tell how well these are matching to my profile. Now, what we do in profile databases, we keep this model, this is called profile HMM model in my database. Okay, and these can be my query. My query could be, let's say, ICER Pune is my query. Then this is not present in this profile, but I can search to this, right? What will be the score of this? This is going to have good score, quite similar to ICER-M. It's just that there's a mismatch in the end, right? So given this model, what is my score of ICER-P can be calculated by traversing this profile HMM. Now you might wonder that this is just a diagram, then how do we store this in a database? It has to be in some text format, right? So that can be done by making a matrix. For example, what all probabilities do we have over here? S to I0 to and to D1 to M1, right? And then from M1 to D2 to I1 to M2, right? So we make a matrix over there. Let's say S to S to M1 transition, and then S to D1 transition, S to I1 transition, right? And likewise, I will have M1 to D2 transition, M1 to M2 transition, and M1 to I1 transition, right? This was I0 actually. And likewise, I can write it down for all of them. And the same way, I'm sorry, this was incorrect. I have to redo it. So the matrix looks like following, because otherwise y-axis, if I write it in the way I was trying to do earlier, y-axis becomes meaningless. So I have, let's say, S to I0 to M1, and you have D1, then M2, I1, D2, M3, and so on. I follow the same sequence over here. Right. So what is the probability that going from S to I0 would be placed over in this cell, right? S to M1 will be placed in this cell, right? So on. So let's say I will have till here, I will have some numbers. And likewise, this is going to be symmetrical till here. I'm going to have these numbers. Now I don't go from S to M2. I don't go from S to I1 or D2, right? So you will have, these numbers will come up over here, right? So which means that this matrix is not actually having values. There will be no value here and no value here, because there is no transition between these states and these states. So you keep these matrices transition matrices in your database, and likewise you store your emission probabilities. Okay, in some matrix form. And if you will see in some of the databases, these two matrices are somehow superimposed onto each other. So people have found some convenient way of superimposing these two matrices. So that's not important. I'm just telling you that what is important, once we know this state transition diagram, this information can be captured in these matrices. Now, one of the important database, HMM database, is called PFAM, Protein Family Database. So what people have done is, so this is HMM profiles. They have found the highly conserved protein domains, conserved protein domains, some chunk of some blocks in the protein through multiple sequence alignments, and converted those into HMM, right? So these are actually, sorry, this is actually identified through MSA, right? And then these are saved in profile HMMs. And you can search these profile HMMs by the same method that I mentioned. So in one of the assignment, you're supposed to go through PFAM database and search this database using Hummer package, which is a standalone package. And if you're not able to do this, you can directly search PFAM on the web server, okay? Hummer you actually download. Right. Okay, so this was all about the multiple sequence alignment. What is left is phylogenetic analysis. So in one of the brief class, I'll talk about phylogenetic analysis and their methods. And then we are done with my part for the time being. And Shashi is going to take over. Most likely, this is going to be
Um, this Friday, he might take up the class. I'll ask him. All right. So be prepared for the class on this Friday by Shashi. I'll post the assignments in the meanwhile.